Okay, welcome everybody to the latest PDHP workshop. I'm Paul Schultz. I'm a data scientist and statistician here at the Population Dynamics and Health Program, PDHP, and I just want to give everybody a warm welcome for coming out today. We've got a couple brave souls in the room who braved the Michigan move-in week and some construction that we've got around here, so I appreciate you guys for showing up, and then everybody online, welcome. Before we get started today, I'm just going to take a couple minutes and just talk through our center just for 2 or 3 minutes before we introduce our speaker today. If you're here, you're in the right place. You've already been to our website and RSVP'd, so that's good. You should have the lay of the land there. I just wanted to let you guys know some of the services and resources that we offer through our center. So we are funded by the Population Dynamics branch of NICHD, so I want to thank our funders for supporting this workshop. Some of the things we do that you might be interested in: we support population scientists, especially early career population scientists. So you've already been to our website and RSVP'd, so that's good. Such as the small grants program to pay for software licenses. We also offer a formal mentorship program as well. So if anyone's looking for more formal mentorship from some more veteran researchers, we offer that as a formal program. And then also we offer paid client work from our team of statisticians and data scientists. So if any of you guys are interested in that, feel free to reach out to me directly, or you can just poke around on our website. All the information is listed there. In terms of the workshop today, we want to make sure everybody's just muted in video and audio for those online. That keeps our recording a little bit cleaner. For questions, I will be monitoring the chat. You do have the capability to unmute yourself if you really need to, but I think we find that it's easiest for you guys just to chat in questions, and then I'll relay those to the speaker. So again, just please keep your video muted and your audio muted online, and then if you have questions, feel free to chat those in, and then I'll let Alexis decide how he wants to manage answering questions and comments that come in from the crowd. One more thing I wanted to plug is we have a weekly coder space. They're twice a week, Tuesday and Wednesdays, correct? So it's for sure open to U of M people, University of Michigan people. For people that are non-U of M, we might actually cut you guys out, unfortunately, but we shall see. But again, you can just Google that. It's the ISR Coder Spaces. I'm in the Tuesday session. That's Tuesday 9:30 to 11, and then there's also a Wednesday session. So that's just for general statistical questions, data science questions, anything technical related to your research. Feel free to pop in and ask that question, and we're sort of building a community with that. So one more plug I'll make before I hand over is that our next workshop is going to be September 24th. So that's in just about a month. Those of you who are on our mailing list will see an invite come through for that, probably early next week. That's going to be with Mike Elliott and Yajuan C, who are ISR researchers here. And that's going to be on sort of blending probability and non-probability samples together in either survey research or clinical trials. So if anyone's interested in that, pay attention for that invite to come out. Again, we're going to turn these around quickly, and we'll probably do one a month for the end of the year through December. So you'll see these invites come in pretty quickly after the last workshop. So on that note, let me introduce our speaker, and then I'll hand over to Alexis. So Alexis Castellanos is a program manager of data science here at the Institute for Social Research here at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's also a data science consultant for the U of M Advanced Research Computing team and a lecturer at the U of M School of Information, where he teaches natural language processing as well as other topics that are related. So thanks everybody for being here today. We got a good speaker, and I will hand over to Alexis.
Thank you. Let's turn that off. Okay, and thank you, Paul, for the introduction. Over the past few months, there's been a remarkable evolution of GenAI, demonstrating its potential for various different domains, from the composition of music, automation of customer service, or natural language processing. We're really starting to see the advancement of AI technologies. And today, I'll provide an overview of GenAI, focusing on the technology that can leverage this efficiently. We'll also delve into the common terminology and explore limitations of GenAI. we go. So what is this workshop? It's a high-level overview of GenAI with a focus on ChatGPT. Why ChatGPT? And that's because it's the most accessible GenAI model that we currently have, and it's also the most flexible. So you could really start here and branch out to whatever you want. This workshop is for new or intro-level users looking to get introduced to GenAI or AI tools. And by the end of this workshop, you'll be familiar with ChatGPT, knowledge of prompting techniques, GPT extensions, be aware of limitations and biases, as well as ethical considerations of AI tools. Now, on to the workshop agenda. Was that a question? Okay, not bad. Okay, on to the workshop agenda. So we have a 4-hour workshop, and it's roughly a length of 4 hours. This workshop is broken up into the following parts. Part 1 will mainly focus on AI definitions and an intro to the GPT platform. We'll move along to how to interact with LLMs, in our case, ChatGPT. Part 3 will be advanced usage of GPT, such as data modeling, processing, and other things. And lastly, in Part 4, we'll touch some frameworks, other models, ethical considerations, and what's next in GenAI, as well as answering some questions that might come along, or if you want to expand to a different platform, feel free to ask questions. Now, we're about to start part 1. Any questions regarding the workshop? No? Okay. As mentioned before, in this section, we'll delve into the realm of GenAI, specifically focusing on ChatGPT. We'll explore how GenAI differs from other AI models, emphasizing the key distinctions. Additionally, we'll examine the dynamics and interactions of ChatGPT. We'll gain insights on the GPT platform. By the end of this module, you'll have a comprehensive understanding and nuances of GenAI and be equipped with the knowledge and, I would say, the experience to navigate the GPT environment efficiently. So let's go ahead and start. Before diving into GenAI, we need to understand that AI is a field as a whole. And here's a Venn diagram of AI. And as you can see, it includes multiple things. And our focus will be mainly in deep learning, and we'll slowly work ourselves into there just by defining what is the difference between AI, machine learning, deep learning, and GenAI. Now, what exactly is AI? Artificial intelligence is a field focused on creating computer systems that can perform tasks requiring human-like intelligence. That's the formal definition. I would say one of the main applications of AI is automating repetitive tasks that would typically be done by humans, such as paying your bills on time or scheduling reminders. Now, this technology has the potential to revolutionize various industries by streamlining operations and increasing efficiency throughout intelligence automation. Moving into the subfield of machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that focuses on developing algorithms for computers to learn from the data and make predictions. How is this any different from the previous definition? Well, that is that machine learning learns from whatever data you feed it in. You no longer have to explicitly program it to do an action. It will learn on its own. There's 3 different branches of machine learning, and those are supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Now, just because we mentioned a technique here in machine learning does not mean that it's not applicable to any subfields. So keep that in mind. Some key uses of machine learning include predictive analysis or forecasting sales, stock market analysis, customer behavior, and pretty much anything having to do with image recognition or video recognition. Now, Diving into a subset of machine learning is deep learning. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning inspired by neural networks. In a way, a theory of how our brain works. Not exactly, but just a theory. And how is this any different? Well, we have now two cases. We have discriminative, which is very similar to what machine learning does, only utilizing the different architecture neural networks. On the other hand, we have generative, which focuses on creating new data from the instances that we fed it in. As mentioned before, the core idea behind GenAI is to learn patterns from existing data and use that knowledge to generate new instances that resemble the training data. For example, the formal definition of generative AI was used to generate this image without doing any extra work. Sure. Oh, so I believe most experts draw that line during, I think it was 2012. AlexNet came out. It was the first large model to utilize neural networks, and it becomes extremely difficult due to the amount of layers to trace back. So we don't exactly know that. That's why we sometimes refer to something like deep learning as a black box, because unless we inherently build it in, it will be extremely difficult to go back and trace the statistical methods. Yes?
Can you repeat the question, please? So I'm not sure if people online
Oh.
heard that, so if you don't mind just repeat the question.
Yep, so the question was, when do we draw the line between statistical methods and something like deep learning? And my response was, this happened around 2012 when AlexNet came out. AlexNet was focused on being able to identify or classify between cats and dogs through images. And ever since then, it's a pretty large takeoff. It's extremely difficult to trace back exactly what the model is doing unless you inherently build it in. And that's why, we call it deep learning. And just to give you kind of like a brief encapsulating statement, machine learning, usually that is only going to be statistical methods being leveraged. And when you move into deep learning, it'll take some of those statistical methods and put it into an architecture like neural networks. And every evolution that has came after that. Do we have any questions on chat? Okay. So a quick little summary, and I think we almost answered this slide actually. So good question. So GenAI focuses on the innovation and creativity, and that is anything from images, music, text generation, and much more, and other types of AI, including the discriminative deep learning, focuses on analyzing data, making decisions, automating tasks. It really is more functional, and it just recognizes patterns and predicts outcomes. Versus our GenAI models, they're trying to extrapolate on examples, almost like you go into art class and learning different patterns and being able to make that your own. And on that note, I would say there's 5 fields that are mostly impacted by GenAI at the moment, and that's creative applications, so something like Adobe Premiere, and it's many like Photoshop iterations. A lot of GenAI tools are used to fill in backgrounds, and that makes it a lot easier for editors to do. We have augmentation of data. So that includes when you don't have enough data to train your model, you put it into one of these, create synthetic data, pull it out, and usually it fits pretty good, and that's not always the case, and we'll go over a small example. There's also music composition, which we won't touch at all. That takes roughly an hour for just about 2 minutes. Now we have image generation, we'll touch a little bit on that, and text generation, which will be our main focus for today. One thing to keep in mind is that image generation is restricted to paid users of the GPT platform. So if you can't follow along, that's okay because it's only going to be maybe about 5% of this workshop. Okay, and before we move along, we're dealing with a very specific section of GenAI models, which are LLMs, or large language models. The way you can identify this easily is that it takes some text as input and then does a thing in a very simple sense. And that's that thing that I can do. It could play video games. It could output an image or a video. It could do audio. It could do text. Really whatever you want. And a brief introduction to GPT. So ChatGPT, as we've mentioned it plenty of times, for those who don't know, it's a powerful development tool developed by OpenAI that generates human-like text responses based on whatever prompts you input. And OpenAI is currently owned by Microsoft. It operates through pre-trained and diverse internet text files. We don't exactly know what text files. That's what kind of makes it a black box and why it could include some biases and limitations that we will speak during this workshop. Now, there's multiple applications of this, especially if you're an API user, because everything that we'll cover today, you could automate it, you could input it into an app, and it could just speak, and you could tune it however you want. We won't be doing that today because we're going through the bare bone basics of how to interact with LLMs and other things like data analyses, data modeling. Now, one last thing is that it is accessible through the web, which is what we'll do today, but you also have mobile and desktop applications, and those actually work a lot better than the web UI. Okay, and yeah. I think, I don't necessarily know. Oh yeah, my bad. So why is it that it works better on the desktop than the web UI? I think it's due to traffic, honestly. It must be hooked up to a different server. And also the API, it's a lot more difficult to work with because, as you can imagine, there's people automating these things, and whatever that system is running on, it's constantly getting bombarded. So if you're working with the API after this, just be worried that you might have to do a little bit more tuning or better prompting. And that's what this workshop aims to do, provide a solid foundation of prompting, natural language processing tools, and some examples. Now, getting started with OpenAI's GPT. So this right here should be linked. You could actually click it and go to their website. And whoever doesn't have a whoever doesn't have an account already, please make one right now so you could follow along. We'll pause for, say, roughly 2 to 5 minutes right now. And if you have any questions in chat, go ahead and drop them. Or if any of you here have any questions, feel free to ask away.
To go over how to, like, imagine I have a lot of text and I want ChatGPT to process it somehow, how to achieve a repeatability? No way.
Yep. So the question was how to control the output of GPT, and more specifically, how to make it reproducible. And yes, we'll go over certain techniques that will allow us to do that. However, always expect some variance because we don't have full control or understanding of the model.
We've got 2 questions from the chat while we're doing this login thing. First one is the U of M, that's University of Michigan, instance of GPT the same?
No, it is not the same. And we'll briefly cover it during part 4 in alternative LLMs. However, everything in part 2, which are prompting techniques, is applicable across all boards of LLMs. So whatever you're dealing with, As long as it's a large language model, you should be able to transfer those same techniques.
Great. And then the second question is there a desktop version of ChatGPT specifically for Windows? So this person says they were under the impression or that they saw one for Mac, but not for Windows. Can you corroborate that? And
I'm actually not sure because I'm a Mac user, but we can go ahead and take a look. So let's go ahead and pause that.
Is it a violation of U of M IT policies to install desktop ChatGPT when we have a the U of M instance?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I would say it really depends on your privileges. If you're a student or an normal user, I don't think that the university would allow this app to be installed without their permission. If you're an admin user, you, like me, you probably could install it. However, I wouldn't recommend it. I would speak to your specific IT department about this issue. Oh, looks like I skipped. So it looks like the Windows version is not out yet, but on the forum for OpenAI, looks like it should be coming soon. And we did have an update last night and the day before, so I'm sure they're going to implement some changes.
This is my own personal question, and you might get into this later. Is there a substantive difference between the desktop versions or any other versions like the app or the API? Are there like meaningful differences between those?
Not necessarily. They're pretty much, except for the API. So the API can be very finicky, and latency on the API could vary. So sometimes you could receive responses back within a microsecond. Other times you're waiting for a response for 2 minutes. And a way to mitigate this is honestly just to pay up. If you're an enterprise, there are different licenses that you can have. And those allow you to have more privileges, more limits, and so on. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and go to ChatGPT. And we'll just have a quick interaction. So we could do something as simple as ask ChatGPT a question. So, right, who is the US president? And that's taking longer than usual. So as of August 2024, the president, so we know that's correct. Now, something to keep in mind right now is that ChatGPT is only trained a certain amount of times. So I believe the last time it was trained was in December of 2023. But we can always check. And that's the great thing about ChatGPT. If you have any questions about it or other things, you could ask away, right? So October. Okay, so even before that. So the updates that I mentioned refer to the systems, but the model itself hasn't been updated since October of last year. So if you're looking for recent news, the model won't inherently know. However, we'll go over a way to overcome this, and it's actually pretty simple. Yep.
This kind of like asking practical things today. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So the question was, is this model capable of answering factual things? And as of ChatGPT 4, yes, I know hallucinations are a big concern, as well as biases and other limitations. And we'll actually cover those in the next section, part 2, and what they are and how to mitigate them. However, I've been a ChatGPT user since, I believe, 2019. I used to have a developer account. And back in ChatGPT 2, this was a huge issue. However, as the models keep progressing, they just get better and better every time. And some of these prompting techniques have become almost obsolete for the newer models because they're just able to grab context that much easier. However, if you are dealing with other things like Llama, which is Meta's version, that will be more finicky, and these prompting techniques will become, I would say, more important for you.
You have one question from the
Yep.
chat. Someone says they asked the same question as you about when ChatGPT is updated, and this person's version said August 2023. Do you have a theory on what the difference between her saying August and you're saying October?
What model are they using? Are they using GPT-4 or GPT-4o?
That's a good question. Someone else corroborated saying August as well. You think this might just be a version difference?
Yep, so I think this should be the version difference here. So I believe on the free account, GPT-4 is, well, it's a predecessor for 4o. 4o brought a bunch of things that I won't go over. If not, I would be up here all night. But GPT-4 has all the capabilities that GPT-4o has in terms of text processing. The new things that came along were mostly for image and video. And we won't really be touching those. I'm using GPT-4o today because it just responds a bit quicker because there's less traffic.
Then this is a question that's kind of coming up. I mean, someone out here said that they asked about the Democratic nominee, which obviously is something that happened past this update time frame. And obviously it mentioned August 2024 in its response to you. So I'm just curious, like how typical is this? Like, you know, if we get into current events past its last updating event, do we just drop off right off a cliff? I mean, obviously it knows about, at least it has a, you know, maybe
No,
a
so
prediction about the nominee.
that's actually a very tricky thing that OpenAI does. And they, by default, I think you're sharing the information to them. So whatever you type in, they grab it and they train. However, I have mine turned off just for this demonstration. I'll turn it back on and I'll show you how to share your data with them if you want to sell your data. Yeah, it's a bit tricky because they put it on by default. Usually companies don't do that.
You're basically saying that it's like, it's learning from, I don't know if it's cookies or whatever, like it's learning from your like browsing history and other things. So if you've got a personal history that's more recent than the training, than its last training, it might know about some current events in each particular instance. Okay.
So what exactly do we just do? Oh, that is still, okay. So what exactly was that? So that was something we call prompting. Prompting is how we interact with large language models, and that's the technical term. If you ever want to look at any prompting techniques or new stuff that comes out, there's a website named promptengineering.com, and they store every publication that comes out and recent performance metrics and so on. Prompts are crucial because it provides the context on a given task. It can also influence the structure on how you interact back and forth. And ultimately, it helps you get to your desired output. Now, let's go ahead and move along to some examples. Oh, I didn't link it there. Okay. Let's pause it. Okay. So what exactly can we do with ChatGPT? Is it capable of just answering questions? Well, not necessarily. There's a couple of things you could do. So we saw asking a general question that everyone in the US should know, who's the president, right? We can also translate from a different language. So there's a phrase over here. And it says, my command, translate the following phrase. Más vale tarde que nunca. So that means better late than never in Spanish. And as you can see, it's able to detect language without you mentioning what the source language is, which is pretty cool. And I've tried this with a couple other languages, at least the Romance language, and they all seem to work pretty seamlessly. And frankly, it's a little better than Google Translate because it captures the context. So those weird translation issues that we had in the past don't really come up as much. Yep. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, but we could ask it how many languages are you fluent in. That's a good one. Over 25 languages, including but not limited to English, Spanish, French, German. So I've only tried the Romance languages because those are the only ones I can confirm. So, but I know it knows French very well and it knows Italian very well. And the reason why it's laid out like this, I believe they just do it on how many users, have a secondary language or what countries are using this. That might be a metric they use on what language do they want it to be an expert on. Also, other languages like Mandarin might be extremely difficult for translation models, even till today. So that's probably why we see it over here, even though we could imagine the user base is much larger. Now there's other things that we could do. One of my favorite things from recent day was being able to tell it to describe an image. This doesn't always work, sometimes it breaks, but I wanted to show it. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Something with my Mac probably. So I wonder if that's because my browsing is off. All right, so it's a panda sipping on coffee, right? Okay, and maybe the link was broken, but now it gives me a pretty good description. You provided a panda holding a cup of coffee. The panda might be drawn in a cartoon or icon style. I think it's a really good description, to be honest. And that's awesome, not for what we're doing today, but if you want to go home and download the mobile application, it does a very good job at detecting objects. You could use it to identify landmarks, or say if you are visually impaired, you could get around the city using this way. That was one of their big exposés in the last update. Yep, question?
Is it useful to create description for people that can see and read to other text? Is it the good way to?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think that description is better than what I would have given. And frankly, that becomes the case with a model like ChatGPT where, okay, it's not a complete expert on everything, but it's just about above average on everything. And if you're on the GPT mobile platform, you could use it for math tutoring, which I thought was pretty cool. It does integral calculus pretty well, up to like a Calc 2 level, then it drops off, as most people would.
I also talked to more talented things, like higher up and stuff.
On the camera?
Yeah, like on.
Oh, on here? Yeah, on here it's pretty good, but if you use the camera itself, you could actually, so probably better because academia, right? But if you take a picture of a math problem, say like Calc 1, some Calc 2 level, it can actually read it and work it out. I'm not sure capabilities, say something like DPQ, for the mobile app. For me, it dropped off, but here it does a pretty good job of explaining everything, and that's because it's been trained on such a large corpus, probably not just academic textbooks, but probably those math forums that we probably all ran into. And I would say this is pretty cool, but we have a bunch of questions, so we'll stop and answer some of those.
I'm not sure. The people are just kind of playing around and kind of commenting what they're doing. I don't see any questions.
Okay, cool.
I'm not missing anything. Actually, no, I'm sorry. There is a question. If you provide a link to a piece of video, could ChatGPT describe and analyze that video?
So what I've done was transcribe a video. So you are able to do that. I'm not exactly sure if the UI will do that for you, at least well. However, I'm actually working on a research project right now using a bunch of YouTube data and OpenAI's model to translate language, detect the language, format it, and take out all the key portions of the video, including timestamps. So it is able to do that. It just depends.
Is that more like a minute-by-minute transcription versus just like an overall like summary description?
So it does both actually, the way I programmed it. So my main thing is getting to the transcription, so full text. And then my next prompt is provide me with the key points and where they're mentioned. So that provides timestamps, which is a smaller layer. And then the last layer is usually something like overall sentiment based on the likes or the engagement ratio on the video.
Interesting. There is one last question as well. Sorry, I think I missed this, but may I know why the model gives very different responses to the two prompt screen? I'm not sure I understand that question, to be honest. I'm assuming this is what you're showing on screen. Oh, maybe this is the two. I'm not sure if maybe this. Daniel, if you want to clarify, please go ahead and clarify. Maybe we'll try to circle back on that one later.
We'll give it a minute or so.
Just referring to the what I'm seeing requiring describing the image.
So what you're saying based on the image?
I was just wondering, why would ChatGPT give the response that in the first one say it appears the link you provided I do not have access to, and then the other one says, well, based on the link you provided, I can describe it in this way. Why would changing a few words?
Oh, that was kind of loud. So if we're talking about the difference between these two things, I think that was a copy and paste error. If you saw me copy and paste, there was like some weird image format that I exited out, and it looks like it was not able to transcribe that. So it might be something with metadata of the copy and pasting. But when I just took the link itself and pasted it, it did give me that description. So user error, not the actual model error. And while we can sit here and say these things are useful or kind of impressive, that's not the main use for ChatGPT. I think majority of the use cases are to grab large corpuses, summarize them, like I said, the research that I'm doing, and be able to output different things. Another thing that's, I would say, impressive is that sentiment analysis is a very difficult field in NLP, and ChatGPT pretty much does a great job at this. And we'll see an example of that right now.
I'm assuming NLP, you mean natural language processing,
Yep.
right? I just want to make sure everybody
Yep,
followed that. Yeah.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at a movie review. What recently came out? Deadpool 3, right? But if I could spell, that'd be nice. And let's look for a rating. And that is 3 stars. So what we'll do is we will not include that 63% down there. We'll copy that and paste it onto chat. So we're asking ChatGPT to provide us with the sentiment of this reviewer and also a star rating. Now, I'm not going to mention the scale, so we'll see what happens. And it does a pretty good job, actually. So sentiment of the movie is slightly mixed to positive, rating 3 out of 5 stars. Woo, I think that's what the reviewer said. Let's take a look. Yep, 3 out of 5 stars. So it's actually really good at doing this, and even if you had a human do this, it would be very difficult to replicate it. So I think that's a pretty impressive portion of ChatGPT, and for the field of natural language processing, it solves some of the issues, and I guess we just needed a lot of data. Now, you could also do the inverse, where you could say, we'll say write an article about the current state of AI. And it's able to produce an article on the industry, what's working, different applications, and it does this pretty quickly. I think it's pretty impressive. The way you should think about GPT is that it shouldn't replace your work, but it should definitely enhance it. So if you're one of those people that definitely starts off with being stuck on the first word of your essay, this is a way to go around it. And the same thing can be applied for programming, which is what I mainly do. And as we can see, it provides a full article. We won't sit here and read it all, but majority of the time, especially with the recent updates, it does a really good job at least writing at about a high school level. Yep.
One quick question. Is there any way to kind of in the sense of take a piece of text and realize if this was GenAI used or not?
So that's extremely difficult. I don't think there's a reliable way to do this, especially, well, right now, it might be very easy because there's certain structural patterns that you'll see about the way it writes. However, a normal person could probably write like this personally.
No, I haven't have a chance. Yeah. Are you guys doing here for like a talk? Great, yeah.
We have student panel after this industry, and then talk, and then
Oh, so the question asked was, is there a way where we could see if these articles were AI generated? And well, it's very difficult to do, especially since there's no metadata that's attached to it. You could just copy and paste it. And obviously, if you're using this to enhance your work, you should also review it, right? And you should edit it and add specific details. It becomes increasingly harder to tell if it was AI generated as we go through the tuning process of the model, because right now it's pretty standard and it does a really good job. No problem. So let's go ahead and close this. And while we have seen that you could do a couple of things, and I didn't show half of the things that GPT could do. You saw text generation, text summarization, sentiment, describing of images, question and answering. In my opinion, GPT is a better platform when it comes to just gathering information in general. And it's been recently updated. If you say something like, provide me your resources, it will do that. And it actually gives you your resources, citations that you could use. Now, how to improve your prompts. And these are 3 pillars that everyone should follow when it comes to prompt engineering. And these are stylize, format, and restrict. And here are common examples. So if you want to stylize something, you want to write a technical paper, you can go ahead and do that. You could write informal, be creative, be persuasive. If you want to format something, say that you just want a bullet point list, say that. Only create a bullet point list. You could say, hey, I want this information in a tabular format. You could also do that. You could produce Excel files, you could produce CSVs, PDFs, whatever you like. Restrict, my favorite, to be honest, because GPT is extremely verbose, and it just likes to blabble on and on and on, kind of like what I'm doing right now. So we can restrict it to one sentence, one paragraph. We could say, use the open web, which we'll get into right now. Or don't use the open web. Sources limited to between a year range, and it'll actually be able to do that. Yep.
Are these like, I noticed earlier where you prompted it to write an article. I mean, I'm assuming there's no like formal keywords in prompt engineering, but like, do you find that certain terms work better than others, or?
Yes, and there's actually a publication. We'll go over the specific technique. However, if you say, let's do something, it picks up on that very well. Also, if you are writing in very formal fashion and you prompt it to respond to you in a very formal fashion, for example, you're doing research, the nodes kind of change within the model, and it goes to that information of formal information that it's known and uses that instead of general information. So write and also be very explicit on how you want to be addressed and what resources you want to use. Any questions in chat or any other questions?
I mean, it might just be interesting to see an example.
No, it's all good. Okay, so let's go ahead and so stylization, that opened up in the wrong window. Okay. Here we are. So like I said before, we want to stylize things. Let's do something really goofy, which would be to use all three pillars in a creative fashion. So we would say, if I could spell. Oh, another thing, if you misspell here and there, it'll catch the context and you won't really have to go back and fix your words unless they're too messed up, then it starts to drop off. But we will say, provide me with, we'll say, a poem. Even better, we'll stylize it as a pirate. And we'll say a pirate rhyme in a poem format. So that is our formatting. And we'll say with only 9 lines. So if you ask me, I could never do this. However, we see ChatGPT is able to create these. And this one looks a little better. So sometimes it branches off and it gives you a couple of options. That was one of the recent updates. And you could go back to the other chat if you really wanted to. It's on a slide right here. Go back and forth. And as we could see, I'm not going to embarrass myself and read this right now. But we see themes of the sea, wind, ship, treasure. We'll say sell through. Okay, so we know that, oh, and a restriction, 9 lines. So it does that pretty good. Now, if we are even goofier, and we go back over here, and add another restriction, about birds, it's also able to adapt. And by the way, you could always go back and edit your prompt. So as we can see, the crow calls and so on. So it's able to adapt every time. Yep. So it's better to edit if you've already developed a process within this chat. However, if you're just starting off, it's better to maybe just create a new one until you get the hang of it. And we'll go over some techniques to help you create that chat.
From the audience.
Sure.
Do you find the customized ChatGPT feature useful? Any tips on how to best utilize that?
Yeah, we're actually going to cover that in about 2 slides.
Great.
We'll go over custom instructions, settings, and creating your own GPT model in a very simple fashion, because if not, we will be here a very long time. Okay, so we went over stylization. Now let's head over to the GPT platform itself. And here are very important settings. So if you are looking at this just on the slides or want to go back later, just know this. General manages your GPT chats, data controls. So this is actually what allows GPT to steal your data. And that is on as soon as you create the account. So if you don't want your data to be used or stored, turn that off. Connected apps. So that also allows your GPT model to connect to something like your email. And this is very helpful if you're doing maybe some automation with Excel sheets. However, if you have a University of Michigan email, they block it off, probably for the right reasons, right? So just be aware of that. Lastly, it allows you to personalize your own GPT with custom instructions, and that's what the question was about. We'll very briefly just open ChatGPT itself. And I can't see my window. Okay. So if you go up here to this icon, what you'll see is whatever initial you see on your email. But if you click on it, are you able to see it? Yep. Yeah, I moved it because of the video. So if you move it though, you'll have the settings format right here. And once you come into these settings, you need to go to data controls, improve for everyone. So this, if it's off, no sharing information. However, I would still not put confidential data in here. And we'll see why in the later portion of this workshop. For now, what I'll do is I'll turn it on. And by default, I believe when accounts are created, that's how it is. Now, we also have connect to apps. That connects to your Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive and security. So multi-factor authentication. Yep.
That it reads. Or it will read whatever part you ask it for.
They say that it only reads whatever you ask it to read. So if you link it to an Excel sheet, it'll be restricted to that. However, I'm very skeptical and I never trust companies. That's my own personal take on it. Okay.
Can you just repeat the question, just in general?
Oh yeah. So in general, his question was, if you connect it to, say, your Google email, how much of that will it read? Well, it said that it will only read whatever you ask it to read. So if you link it to an Excel sheet or maybe a Word document, it'll go to it, do what it has to do, and then get out. However, I personally am very skeptical of that, and I wouldn't connect it to an email that is not completely wiped with all my personal information. I would say create a new email and then use that.
Following on that, what about for the connected apps? I mean, are you judicious with that? Like, do you turn them off or do you turn them on and only as needed and then turn them back off again right away? Or
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, what you think is best practice in that.
Yeah, so I would say the least amount of data that you can share continuously is better. Connecting to apps, that portion, I could say it's pretty dangerous, at least from the perspective of, I guess we don't want to get too technical, but there's an endpoint, right? And your information needs to be transferred over from the internet. If there's ever an intersection, you're going to lose it. Even if OpenAI is saying they're not storing your information, there's always the risk of that interception. So I would just not do it. Yep.
Anything like that, right? You're
Yeah,
saying like some
exactly.
sort of third party that's in the middle there. Okay,
Yep,
I'm
so-
just curious. I mean, for those of us who work on confidential data, obviously, like, yeah, I would have to think 10 times before I unleash this thing onto my desktop. But I mean, even just in our personal lives, I mean, do you have any? I guess it's the same thing. You probably just already answered that, but I don't know if you have a distinction between confidential data, but then just maybe your personal information.
So I would not have confidential data on the same machine that has ChatGPT. Saying that though, I would say that sometimes when I'm working with programming, I can use my scripts that don't have identifiable information, or it's just a simple process that I'm trying to get through, being structured to some data. So that's completely fine. Now, if you were to put, say, column names and specific hard-typed information, that's a big no-no, and you shouldn't do it. Yep.
One thing I was thinking about doing is using an LLM to classify names. That is directly feeding names. That's the AI. So how
can you do it?
Yeah, like is there a way to do it in a principled way, basically?
Yep. So the question was, he wants to use specific names in a data set, and this has the potential of being leaked. From what I've used, the not the mobile desktop, the actual desktop application, you could do some processing without having to connect to the internet. I still wouldn't advise it. There's different LLMs that are compliant with something like even HIPAA rules, which are usually the strictest. And you could use some of those LLMs instead of ChatGPT. The reason why we're focusing on ChatGPT today is because it's extremely accessible. But everything that you take from today's prompting and engineering portion should be applicable to just about everything. So let's see, where were we? Okay, yeah, so we were showing the settings. We went over the important portions here in the settings, which was the data controls. So sharing your data, yes or no. Now, if we go over down to customize ChatGPT, there's actually 3 very important settings that I always click on, but for this demonstration, I click them off. That's browsing. So this allows your GPT to then be up to date, provide you links, and sometimes if it doesn't have an answer, it'll search the web for an answer and provide it to you. If it's not sure, it'll tell you, hey, I'm not sure about this, but based on this article, I can provide you the following. There's also DALL-E. So that's the model that is responsible for creating images. And lastly, we have code, my favorite. So for code, what it does is that it's able to provide you with not just Python code, but R. It can provide you with SQL. That's what I use it for a lot. Any type of SQL queries that it helps me write. It could be Java, JavaScript, and we'll do some very quick coding today. It won't be too technical, but we'll create a short app with like 2 commands. And we'll also do data analysis, which will be in Python. But you could always say, now write this in R, and it can do that. So let's click those off. Now, when it comes to custom instructions, here is where you would want to put information, and it does come up a lot. So what would you like ChatGPT to know about you? Usually I put that I'm a data scientist. I do sometimes IT work or software engineering work. I'm also employed at the University of Michigan. And lastly, I say that I really have no hobbies and I'm a nerd and I just code all day, every day. And it actually picks up on that because it'll give me very specific and sometimes even text-written responses, like from an MIT book in some programming language. And how would you like ChatGPT to respond? So that is, say if you're a creative writer, you want it to be, like I showed, a pirate. Or you want it to be very formal. You want it to be maybe a critic, right, of your work. So whenever you're sharing something, be very critical and steelman the opposing side. So those are things that you can put in here to be able to get a little bit better responses. Something that I've done in the past was, say, I'm using Python, and by default, it leans towards certain things, like using matplotlib to create visualizations. If I don't want matplotlib, you could just write on here, use Seaborn or use whatever. And majority of the time, it'll do a good job at avoiding it. If not, then just type it, hey, I want it in this instead of that. But it's kind of like a filter. It might catch some things, but it won't be perfect. And we'll head over to our next slide, which is the browsing store. So let's go ahead and save those settings. So something that's very cool is that you can explore GPTs. And this has a lot of options. And I've actually got a couple published that I won't share which ones I made. But these GPTs are specifically tailored to do a certain task. So there's a code tutor. So these are the featured ones up here. But you could look at just about everything. So if we're interested in images, let that load. Then we get a bunch of them. So like this one is a cartoon generator. Create images for me, Earth, and so on. There's also programming ones, there's developer ones, there's academic writing, creative writing. All the functionalities that we saw in those first prompts, there's expert models that have already been made for you, and all you have to do is search for one. Or you can make your own, which is what we'll do next. Yep.
Excuse me. Does the capabilities section appear for folks who are online with a free version? It does not show up for me. That's one comment we got.
I think that might be true because a lot of these are going to be dependent on other models, like the DALL-E model. So this might not be available to you. It used to be available like in 3.5, but they might have taken it off. So good thing to point out. And
This point,
yep,
right?
yep. So this will be a paid upgrade at this point.
Gotcha.
And we had another question over there.
Why should I try a specific GPT versus more general?
So you should try a specific GPT versus a general one if you're doing something very repetitive and you don't want to go through the process of prompting and setting scenarios, sharing information. So how these customized GPTs work is that it already knows all that background information, so you don't have to copy and paste it. Also, you have people who are experts, say, on data analysis, have already created these things and know the formal language, they know what graphs to use for what type of data and so on. Although these are slowly becoming more obsolete because how good the recent updates have been, that we don't need to prompt a lot or provide a lot of information and context to produce something, right? I guess just a quick little, oh, it says Christine is talking. Do you have another question? No? Okay. Yep.
On the specific GPTs, if I create a GPT, will that give me a path to replicability?
Could you repeat your question?
Like, if, I don't know, let's say, if I design a GPT as a developer, and then I use it to a paper, will that, the results that I will get from that one will always be the same, so I can replicate always.
Yep. So
like, will that
the question
freeze?
Yeah. So the question is, if you were to create your own GPT and then use it to write a paper, could you replicate your responses? And majority of the case, that's what it does. There will always be a little bit of variance, and we'll go over why that is. However, this does make it, I would say, more reproducible and more reliable majority of the time. And the same goes for the custom instructions. Make sure to fill the custom instructions whenever you're doing something. And apart from that, also go to whatever chat you have, and you could make that into a custom GPT if it's always worked for you. And I'll show you a really quick example of how to create your own GPT model right now. Oh, well, maybe I should show this a little bit. So if we are going to create a mind map to explain the field of AI. So we have a sample prompt here. And we don't necessarily have a model open, but I know Whimsical does this. And Whimsical creates mind maps for you. And what it does, it'll create an outline. If you've ever created a mind map, this is pretty much what the beginning stage looks like. And that shows the field AI because that's one of the things that could confirm that if it works or not. Remember, our prompt said to explain the field of AI and its subfields and create a mind map to provide examples of each model for each specific field. We'll scroll down. Now, whenever it's going to access an exterior app, it'll ask you, hey, should you allow? Don't click the always allow. I just allow this one time because I'm very skeptical. And it'll now generate this mind map. Create a link. So as we can see it here, it creates our outline into a mind map. There's specific ones. So say you're into systems engineering, databases, and so on. There's different plugins of GPTs that people have already created so they can do this for you. And this opens on Whimsical, an application, and it provides you the mind map itself already created. What's pretty cool about this is whenever GPT creates diagrams for you using external applications that we would use in other fields like engineering, it just provides you the template. You can go back and edit it whatever way. You can add things to it. And that's what I've been trying to show. It's that it should be a starting point just to excel whatever process you're trying to complete, not exactly a replacement or a final draft, right? So I think that's pretty cool. And remember, even if you can't search or you didn't search and start a new chat, you could always write the @ symbol and then mention whatever chat you want to access or whatever model you want to access. So DALL-E is the image generator. And I've just added it right now. And I'm going to say, provide me with a picture of a golden retriever sipping a cup of coffee. And this is actually how I created majority of the pictures that you'll see on the slides. I just use the formal definitions and type them in. I'm not extremely creative, but this model is. So, and that's pretty much an image of my description, right? So have fun with these if you have access to them and take advantage of it. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to create our own GPT and show how simple it is. And we'll go into a not customized GPT, that was a misclick. My GPTs, and we're actually going to delete that because that was my demo. So there's a couple of things that we could see here. This create tab is telling you basically prompt me in and fill me in with the past details. Just like I told you before, it's all the background information that your GPT model needs to do something, whatever you might want it to do. So in our case, I'm going to say, create a coloring book of domestic cat breeds. And that's a very simple prompt. This can get a lot more complex and we could go down a whole rabbit hole, but we'll just submit this as is and we'll see what happens. So what GPT does is that it'll get whatever context you mean and it'll connect to available models to try to accomplish whatever you have. So now what it's saying is, let's pick a name for your GPT and it'll actually generate one for you. So it says right there, coloring companion, and we'll just say yes. You could always change it, or you could tell it, no, I want it to be this. The next thing it'll do is it should create an image for your GPT. So now it's generating an icon for it. And that actually plugs into the logo creation GPT model owned by OpenAI. I can't remember the exact name of it, but that's what it's doing. And I don't actually like that one. It's kind of ugly. So let's go ahead and change it. No. So let's see if it listens to me. Okay, and that looks a lot better. For those of you who don't know, tabby cats have stripes, domestic short hairs, and that's kind of what it looks like. I like it. So we'll approve. And as we could see on the other tab is your own model. So we could say, hey, create 10 images. We'll say 5, just to cut it a little shorter. Images for my coloring, not, okay, coloring book. So and now it's processing. I guess while that is processing, we could go to the configure tab. So this configure tab took your prompt and gave it a better prompt for general users so they can get a description of it, which is pretty cool. Conversation starters, you could select those, say that you want this to make it a paid service, then you could do that. And this will prompt them to guide them, hey, which one do you want to create based on prices and so on. You could also just use it as a breaking the ice, right, giving ideas. And let's see, start over here. And the first one, it says, line art illustration of a Maine Coon. So if you know, that's a Maine Coon. Sorry, I like cats, but that's a Maine Coon. It's very long-haired, and it does a pretty good job. I mean, if you ask me to draw this, it would probably take me maybe about an hour. And you could do this automatically. So we'll say, and it provides an image description every time. I'll generate. So one thing that you have to keep in mind is that you can't exactly generate the same image again if you want to tweak it. So what it does is it goes through the full generation process every time. So you'll never be able to like change a specific detail. That's a downfall of this type of model. So what did it make now? Let's see, Siamese cat. And yep, that looks like a Siamese cat for a coloring book. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to create your own GPT. But this can get extremely complex, especially if you're writing something to develop applications. And with that, let's go ahead and, yep.
This person just wants to like a recap, basically like can you just give us a big picture? She says you use ChatGPT to create another GPT engine.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep. So basically, I use GPT to create another GPT to then do GPT stuff.
And then I think if you could just revisit the point you made earlier about like, when do you think is a good, when do you personally, I guess is the way to say it, like, what's a good time to create, like, to spawn a new agent or to create a new GPT? Like, if you're going to do only cat coloring books, you give it to this agent that already knows that's what you're doing with it, right? And so it automatically translates all the prompts into that.
Yeah, for example, say I wanted to try to make some quick money online. I could make a coloring book, get about 100 pages using the API in maybe 5 minutes. Send those over for printing. Bam, you have a product. You could also say, hey, I'm doing a very specific task on a programming module that is not very well documented. Feed in all the documentation to this model, and it'll start to deconstruct the documentation that does exist and filter out all the other stuff. It'll then become an expert on this specific module.
I see. So it's mostly when you're kind of like,
Very specialized.
we should think about it if you're doing specialized tasks that you're going to
Yep.
repeat over and over again to the point where you want to just like skip all the startup steps and just go right back into doing this task, right?
Exactly.
Great. Next question, actually, different question. Can you save the newly created GPT to your desktop?
No, you cannot. So that has to remain online, and that's because it runs on their servers. I'm pretty sure soon we'll get something similar due to the local desktops. Also, there is every model that's released is actually then pushed to something called Hugging Face. And if you're a Python programmer, Hugging Face is like a hub for any type of models, and it provides you the source. So even though the newest version, like GPT-4, is not available, you can get access to GPT-2, and GPT-3 is coming pretty soon to Hugging Face. You can create your own models basically from scratch, and it'll run locally. Now, you need to be more of a computer scientist to be able to tune this model in the way you want it to, and also get a lot of data, allocate hardware, and so on. But it can be done, especially if you're a large organization, like say Ford Motor Company has their own specific LLM to help their workers with jobs and finding resources and so on.
I'm going to assume this person has like a use case specifically for the desktop, but for the rest of us, it's going to, if I log in, it's going to remember my GPTs
Yep.
online, right? So I don't have to worry about these things disappearing on me.
Yep.
As long
So
as I'm logged in, they're going to be there when I come back.
anytime that you create one, it'll automatically be saved to your GPTs. I've had up to like 10 at once. I
Okay.
cleared them for this, but
Yeah, like, do you happen to know, is there a limit or something like that that we should
I
think about?
don't happen to know there's a limit. However, we could ask GPT.
Sure, okay,
Yep.
fair enough.
Lastly, so as we could see, there's real world benefits, but there's also challenges. We have creativity and innovation. We have efficiency. We have personalization with the last portion of the presentation, but there's also challenges like quality control. There's ethical concerns and privacy issues. And these three topics, we'll dive into them in the later sections. Specifically, the next section will deal with quality control. And with that, we'll open into part 2. And in this part, we'll go to, are LLMs just repeating or reasoning? What are hallucinations and biases? And prompting techniques to mitigate these two things. We could take maybe a 10-minute break and continue.